One of the most common and important ideas in all of economics is the idea of marginal analysis. And the starting point for understanding marginal analysis is to understand the concepts of total, average, and marginal, and to understand how the three relate to each other. So the purpose of this video tutorial is to go through a simple example that illustrates how to calculate total, average, and marginal change, and how the three relate to each other. So the example we'll use is one of four friends, and Sam, Jim, Bob, and Stuart are together with some free time, and it is their plan to go out for pizza. Now, no one person has enough money to buy pizza, but if they put their money together, they can get pizza and share it. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to combine all their money and enjoy some pizza together. Now, for whatever reason, each person has a different amount to contribute to this pizza fund. So let's go through the process of them combining their money and calculate the measures of total, average, and marginal change. So we start just by seeing how much money each person has to give. Sam can give $6. Jim is able to give $4. Bob is the most well off that day, and he can give $8 toward their pizza. And Stuart has the least to give. Stuart has $2. Now, to calculate the total, all we're going to do is take all the numbers in our set and add them together. And that gives us a total of $20. So the total amount of money in the pizza fund is $20. The other question that we might ask is, on average, how much does each person give? So to calculate our average, we again start by adding all the numbers in the set together, and that gives us $20. But then we're going to count the number of observations in our set, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to divide that total amount, $20, by the number of observations in the set, 4, and that gives us an average of $5. So we can say on average each person gave $5 toward the pizza fund. Now notice something about this measure of $5. No one friend in the group actually gave $5. Now, that's not a problem. We expect that to happen with average. Average isn't meant to represent an actual observation, or in our case, an actual person in the group. Average just tells us what is typical in a set of numbers. It sort of tells us what is central, or what's expected from a set of numbers. So if we ask the friends the question, on average, how much did each person give? The best answer is $5. And you see there's a range from $2 to $8, but right in the middle of that, kind of the typical amount, the central amount, is $5. So that's the idea of average. That brings us to the third measure, marginal change. And so to understand marginal change, we'll go through putting the pizza fund together, one person's contribution at a time. So we start here where no one has given money. And notice that at this point we cannot calculate a marginal change. In order to calculate a marginal change, we need 2 observations of our total measure. And so in this case, we only have 1 observation of total. We cannot calculate a marginal change. Now, Sam contributes his money first. He gives $6. Now we can observe a change in the total amount, and that means we can calculate the marginal change. So we take our new total after Sam gives of $6. We subtract our previous total of $0, and that tells us that Sam's contribution, his marginal contribution, is $6. Jim contributes his $4. and we can go through the same process. The total goes up from $6 to $10. The marginal change is $4. Bob contributes $8. Again, total goes up from $10 to $18. We take the difference between those two numbers here to get our marginal change. The marginal change in the pizza fund was $8. Last, Stuart brings his $2 to give, moves the total up to $20, and Stuart's marginal contribution is $2. So the idea of marginal change, very straightforward. It's just the change in total that results from adding a new number to the set. Now, we understand total, and we understand average, and we understand marginal change. The next thing to understand is how the three relate to each other. So what we'll do is, with our same example, we're going to put all three measures, the total, the average, and the marginal change, in the same table, and we're going to see how they change as each person gives money to the pizza fund. So again, we start with no money and nobody giving. We can't calculate a marginal change because we only have one observation of total. We also cannot calculate an average because we have 0 numbers in the set. Nobody has given. We have 0 numbers in the set. We can't divide by 0, so we can't calculate an average and we can't calculate marginal. Now Sam gives. That means we have 1 number in the set, so we can calculate an average. Our total is $6 because that's what Sam gave. That's all we have. We divide that by 1. The average is $6. Now in this case, the average and marginal are equal because Sam is the only person who's given. He moved the total up from $0 to $6. So his marginal contribution was $6. Jim is next. His marginal contribution is $4. And notice that it changes the average. Our total goes up from 6 to 10. So here's our total of $10. But now we have 2 numbers in the set. So when we calculate our average, we divide by 2. We get an average amount given of $5. Bob gives the most with $8. He moves the total up to $18. He also increases the number of people, or the number of observations in the set, up to 3. So to get the average, now we're going to divide our total, $18, by 3 people. We get an average of $6. Bob's marginal contribution was $8. All right, and again, the average changes at each observation. Stuart gives the least. He moves the total up to $20, and now we're going to divide that total by 4 to get our average, and we can see that our average for the whole group, like we calculated earlier, is $5. Stuart's marginal contribution, like we calculated earlier, is $2. Now notice when Jim gave that the average actually decreased, and that's because Jim's marginal contribution of $4 is less than the average of $6. So that made the average decrease. On the other hand, notice that when Bob gave his $8, the average actually increased from $5 up to $6. The reason is exactly the same. Bob's marginal contribution of $8 is greater than the average of $5. That means the average is going to go up. So that leads us to an important principle to remember. Anytime that the marginal change is less than the average, the average will decrease. And anytime a marginal change is greater than the average will increase. So any positive marginal change increases the total. But in order to increase the average, a marginal change must be greater than the current average. So in economics, we are going to apply these ideas of total, average, and marginal to costs. We're going to apply them to production, and we're going to apply them also to other areas. So you're going to see them coming back again and again. And like I mentioned at the first, marginal analysis is actually at the core of all of economics and all of the way that we reason and think through economic problems. So understanding these basic ideas of total, average, and marginal, and understanding how they relate to each other is going to be very important, and it's going to help you as you move on to more complicated economic concepts.